I just started this job so long, but already feel the need to have a style. Online diary here, network not available, good, but sometimes when I stand right where I can get signal, it sounds funny because I work at a broadcasting station where you would think there is contact with the outside world outside. But during the 3 weeks here, I feel more cut off from the world than ever. I have to be honest with you, sometimes it's lonely and boring here, but sometimes completely crazy. In those painfully boring days, I need a place to talk and tell that story. That is the reason I choose to write here, to tell you about life up here. I am sitting next to the wall right now, near the toilet, the only place today where my butt is cold and my back is sore, but at least I have a life of 5 scabies. My name is Evelyn. This name sounds old to me, I know. I am 24 years old with a journalism degree, but the best job I can find is being a radio DJ. 3 weeks ago, I started working at a station broadcast about 15 m above the ground on a hill in the middle of an old Nong Than town. This is a sparsely populated forest and area, a lonely and sometimes really lonely place, scary if you live here, which I almost certainly do. If you do, this is probably the transmitter, the only wave you can hear in town nestled in the valley of the mountains. The mountain is covered with green, but the signal is transmitted far enough away to sometimes passers-by also can be heard. If you ever pass by the road, the long road next to the forest, sometimes stop to resolve the dispute after passing the rest stop without toilet facilities. Over the past 10 years, you may have heard my voice or some songs I play, enough genres to please everyone, people in town. When I say we, I mean me and the boss who brought me here. Now, since I'm the only DJ here, maybe you will wonder how this place works just with a DJ, and I'll tell you. I lived right at the station when I got the job, also given a back room with a refrigerator, cushion, and basic amenities, a version for a one-room apartment. The station will broadcast automatically for 6 hours at midnight so I can sleep, although sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night to check the live broadcast at the workplace, a condition that many people can refuse, but it's okay with me. I just lost my house recently, but that's a story for another post. I mean, I work here alone and all the time. There have been only a few quick conversations in the past. The set lasted 5 minutes, and because he was the only DJ, my job is just to develop music, update weather forecast warnings, emergency alerts, and a bit of local news. Calls rarely come. Sometimes I forgot that there was still someone listening, but after all, I said that this place is driving me crazy, right? Some people will think this is a remote place. There is only one grocery store and one small restaurant about 50 miles from the station. The surrounding forest will not be there if people in the forest cause trouble, but actually no, same post last week singing over and over again on the radio for a while. Now it's not because the station is in trouble, but just repeat the song over and over again. When will it end? I remember that song, Unchained Melody, and I know for sure it doesn't last 75 minutes. No one called to complain, and after nearly 80 minutes of listening to the chorus of the song repeating as if the song was composed that way, I finally moved on to another post, but not before receiving one call. That call was the first call I ever received at this station. The other end of the line was the voice of a frail old man. He just said thank you in a slow, dry voice. He pronounced it so slowly it sounded like his mouth was full of dust, and I can almost smell the musty smell from the electricity. He hung up before I could say anything, but I am glad for that. I'm not sure he has the strength to say another word. Then came last Wednesday. There were 5 falcons that flew into the window of death, meaning they crashed into the glass door so strongly that they just fell. I know that this tower is not empty. It is a transparent object awake in the middle of the forest scene. But on the same day, just a few minutes apart, different birds crashed into the window of my broadcast room, the same place. I was surprised the glass didn't break, but they left unpleasant marks, kept me busy all day until I climbed out through the fire escape with a cheap, antique window cleaner. The dictionary here, we have interesting rules. There is a table near the desk. I have a list of rules that I am required to comply with. No, the station must not be silent for more than a few minutes. If a technical problem activates the station bell note, I still don't know what the bell is except for a button on the wall with this inscription, a mystery full of bran. Take care of the equipment and don't leave anything unattended. What are the 3 suspicious calls? They must also be recorded, absolutely not overwrite any recording. 4. When foggy, blind people are not allowed to leave the building. Do not open the door, activate the urgent message. The fog rule level makes me quite uneasy. This is why they need a person to cover 20 bill TR7 at the station, at least until they find the coin karma. It surprised me when blindness is a serious enough problem to require an urgent warning, but only after a few days working, I understood why. On Monday at work, I first had to use the emergency radio broadcast room. It has a window looking out towards the forest trees. I originally thought this was just to get natural light, but now I think it's a form of sentinel, fire bone soup, or whatever the reason I sit so high up. It was to do something important that day. I was about to play a classic song by Fleetwood Ghost when I suddenly saw white clouds rolling on the horizon. I turned on the song, turned off the microphone, and ran to the window, thinking it might be a battle avalanche coming. Sounds crazy, I know, but from a distance, it looks no different than an avalanche. It is a rolling white-gray patch swirling like ocean waves as they pass over and over, moving towards me. The fog does not go away, can you do it? The waves of mist move like footsteps, undulating as if controlled by gravity, making me almost imagine it coming out with sound. But that is a silly thought. I was stunned and didn't look for too long. I was a little scared before the dense layer of fog advanced on the town side. I followed the instructions and went back to my desk, stopped the music, and held the microphone. This is an emergency alert for Pine Haven Town. I read according to the script, trying to keep my voice calm and clear. This is a dense fog warning. Please note this is a special heavy fog warning for Pine Haven. Please go home immediately and wait. Please lock all doors and windows. I frowned at my own words. This is just fog, but I don't think it will sneak into people's houses and cause trouble. No, maybe this is just an unnecessary precaution for legal reasons, somehow, but it makes me feel chills down my spine. I turned off the microphone and left the radio on silent, though I love Steve Nicks's voice. I'm too busy watching the fog to mind the quiet air. Hey, I looked down at the thick fog cloud. The special was almost reaching the broadcasting station and wrapped around the foot of the tower. It is not completely all the way up to where I stand, but each breath of fog still drifts through the large glass door, allowing me to see the whole forest area. I can see fog covering everything where there's almost nothing left to see, some of the tallest pine trees and the treetops moving. I first think this is a hallucination due to the fog floating below, but I was whispering. The pine trees that I see are swaying, shaking each tree back and forth in the direction of each other. We are moving quite strongly, as if something is pushing them. Crazy thoughts suddenly crossed my mind as if something is coming towards me, pushing through the tree trunks on their way. Their movements are sinuous, like a snake. I saw a tree shaking, then another tree on the right, then another on the left. The closer I get, the more I stared at the scene with curiosity more than panicking. Right when I was prepared to be really scared, then one thing happened next that surprised me even more. A strange sound rang from the phone. I ran to my desk and picked up the phone, eyes still not leaving the window. Hello, Evelyn, on the other end of the line was my boss. He sounded angry. I could almost feel every drop of saliva sprayed from his words. Turn the radio back on immediately, sir. I am issuing an alert fog emergency, I think I know, but as soon as I turned on the radio, he hung up before I could ask anything. But that was probably a good thing. I looked up through the window to see the fog layer rising higher. The treetops were completely gone, and the glass door was almost covered. I swear I saw something moving in the gray fog outside the window, a shape, something dark and moving, hidden in the fog membrane, not clear. I did not linger to look any further, followed the boss's words, and returned to my seat. I put on my headphones and turned up the music. Every now and then, the radio station plays a song. The Eagles' song came over the loudspeaker and reached everyone in my town. I breathed a sigh of relief. Actually, I'm relieved as far as I know. Nothing dangerous just because I turn off foreign music, except maybe my job, though an unpleasant feeling still lingers. When I looked up at the window, the fog was still there, but it gradually sank into the forest. Only in a moment it sank out of sight and was gone. The pines appeared again, and I looked to see the horizon through the fog. Strangely enough, I feel like I am seeing something tangible, life. Since that day, fog has not returned. I don't need to add any additional emergency alerts, and it's been 2 weeks since that incident. Now that it's happened, everything is just at the level of normal, meaning normal with my acceptable level of weirdness. I receive calls occasionally from someone in town that I don't recognize. What that person usually says is nonsense that I can't understand. Occasionally, a song on the playlist will start to rewind, and sometimes I can hear people talking even though I'm wearing headphones. The sound is vague and as unclear as a hiss. Yesterday, I saw a bird perched on the window ledge and stared at me with eyes that I swear are like human eyes, but unless someone is crossbreeding bird DNA with humans, maybe I was just too worried. I still have so much to tell, and I am sure that in the coming days and weeks I will have many more stories to write, things that might interest you. But honestly, right now, my ass started to ache terribly from sitting too long on the cold floor next to the toilet block. Music plays for 20 minutes and I'm almost done. I need to keep up with local news. If you happen to pass by and find a place to stop, you might hear me. If so, do not stop at the roadside station. The toilet is still broken and the coffee there tastes like gasoline. Maybe it is real gasoline. It's Evelyn from 104.6 FM. Good luck, sleep well, and drive safely. Have you ever met a person who is just simply too much talk? Yet I want to say about a person that they alone have withdrawn clean your energies, as if they were the whole noisy crowd of a big city, all rolled into one body only. I think we've all met at least once one such person, the kind of person that makes you wonder how they contain the greatness within without exploding, tossed like a cheap ball. I met such a person. He is sitting right now in the room with me. I'm sure you are all here to read about stories, strange things that happen at this broadcasting station, and believe me, I have quite a few stories worth telling, afraid to tell. But first, I need to introduce my new colleague, who just started working this morning. Today is his first day, and it will probably be his last day too. He is named Daniel. Daniel is the type of person who talks a lot, is always moving, and seems to think I am Bob Barker in the flesh. My second week here, the boss stopped by and commented that I looked tired. You know why? I just sleep lucky to get Dad's voice every night like that, in 3 weeks and still not out. Other than that, Daniel will be working part-time to give me time. The boss said to let him take some missions so I can go out to breathe some air. The townspeople also would love to have a new voice, even though a little reserved. I understand what my boss means. He needs help, and people in the town also need something new. CH Mattress listened to their radio, but I know that Dan and I would be like oil and water. I decided to let him try, but the first time he turned on the mic and shouted, "Good morning, and look, the sun is shining so handsome." I can't help but look at him with eyes of both surprise and fear that if he keeps yelling like that, he will make every old man in town go crazy with a heart attack instantly. Sure, the population of the town will be halved. Though Daniel's exaggerated broadcast style made me feel bad for him, It's not because he tries too hard or because he seems to have a desire to draw attention to those things. Both are true, but not for the reason I feel sorry for him now. He was sitting in the corner of the room, curled up in the fetal position, shaking with blood flowing from both ears and one side of his nose, crying. Considering the first day Daniel had, it was a rather strange day. At 8 o'clock am he arrived. I think he was surprised to see me not meet a petite, lovely colleague, but instead me with messy braids, stuffed hoodie, and 2 warm granola bars I forgot how long ago I had. By 9 o'clock, I let him read the weather forecast, and he did it with passion. By 10 o'clock, I had to explain to him that the bird on the window with humanoid eyes has been around for days, and maybe there was no intention at all, just it's ugly. I calmed Dan down until 11 o'clock. He said there was a strange crying sound coming from the sink in the bathroom. I also find it a little scary to know he heard it too, but I just shrugged and said that is not an excuse for you not to wash your hands. At exactly 12 o'clock, we received a call. This is a very, very unusual thing, often in all strange things. The strangest thing is that there is someone who actually lives here. I stared at the screen for a long time, thought whether to pick up the phone or not, but in the end, I decided it would be weird not to listen. "Hello, caller, we have connected you," I said in a soft, mature radio voice. On the other end of the line, there was silence for a moment, but I could hear some static and light breathing. "Yes, Evelyn," it was a woman's voice, probably about 70 years old. She sounded like she was shaking, which I guessed was just stress from being on air. "My name is Rose. I have something I want to say to you." "Of course, Rose, what's up today?" I asked. "I had some weird dreams, baby, and I wonder if anyone else has had this happen like that. You know, last night I dreamt of a forest split in two, like the Red Sea parted. There, girl, I hope you know the story of Moses, right?" I glanced at Daniel. The corners of his lips slightly curved up in a smile mixed with a little grimace, as if wanting to say, "Oh my God," again. He replied with a mischievous smile, satisfied that I am the lucky one to answer the phone. "I know. What about Rose then?" The ground opened up and something rose from it. It covered the whole sky, you see. I don't know, indescribable, but it covers everything, town and sun. All I can see is its sound, one terrifying roar that made the whole ground shake. Then I woke up, she thought. God was alive in the forest, little girl. Daniel saw the feeling on my face. I didn't want to answer because of fear of unintentionally offending or encouraging more frantic, similar calls. So he finally did one good for me by answering instead. "I had a nice dream, madam, but I think if God lived in the forest, he will not give her nightmares like that." He laughed, but the laugh was interrupted by the sharp voice of the woman on the other end of the line rubbing him. "She tried us to fear the Lord." Her voice sounded like a squeak with an old lady. She almost made me scared of that voice. And again, I didn't say anything. My wry smile disappeared and was replaced by a tense expression, straight and very clearly annoyed. "I don't like this conversation. It has moved from sky to empty cell, then died damn very fast. I have 3 weeks to familiarize myself with the strange, wall-breaking games in this place, but this is different. This is a real conflict that I can't blame for the stress caused by the isolation of Rose's speech and the way she spoke. It was a bit dangerous, an evil voice of the old lady Heen Lan. The worry disappeared, and suddenly I felt like I am talking to a real person with malice towards both of them. "I'm afraid it's time to issue a weather forecast, Rose, but call back if you still have interesting dreams. Hey, thanks for calling, ma'am, and best wishes to you." On one cold afternoon, I hung up, then turned to Dan with big, round eyes and a skin sign with lips, "Block that number." I wish I could say that the strangeness ended right then, but we've never been so lucky. After Rose's call, we received more calls, 2, then 3, then 7 calls by 5 o'clock p.m. It all looks very similar. Everyone in town told about their dreams, but not all must be old people talking about God or something terrible they saw rising from the woods. I hear all sorts of people of all kinds of voices, young and old people. Some are a little weird, and some seem more skeptical than a call that made me startled. I still remember every word. The caller was a young woman, perhaps my age, and her voice sounded hesitant but also a little desperate to tell someone about what she saw. "I saw a bird with human eyes," she told me immediately. "I'm curious because this seems a bit too real on a dream level." "No, girl," I answered. I hear heavy breathing on the other end of the line. I don't sleep again since it started landing on my window, all the windows that never had one before. "Sorry, I shouldn't have called." Before I had time to say anything, she hung up, so hard to describe how I felt after that call. "Sorry, I think so." I feel guilty, some responsibility with sadness and hesitation in her voice, with what she felt the need to apologize for telling me those things. What she felt, a sense of dread, rose up in my heart. I hope she is okay, whoever she is, and hope she can find out why those windows appear. I will admit that I had to pause writing to care for my new colleague. Like I said, his first day was so bad seems light to say. At first, he was just a little scared about the weird overall here, but after the last call of the day, his health really worried me. I let Daniel control all while I'm out making a sandwich, realizing it was almost 9 p.m. and I haven't eaten anything all day. The human body is annoying because it's always demanding. I got a call and I realized that only when I heard his reply did I not hear the bell ring. Then it was too late, and what a strange time to take a call, but I think if it was someone harassing, at least it will be interesting to see him handle it. However, silence followed the words. "Hello," the first moment passed and he said nothing. When I finally walked out from the kitchen with a sandwich in hand, I saw my coworker throw the headphones off his head and scream, hands covering his ears. His eyes were wide open and red, with prominent veins on his forehead and neck. His black hair bounced back and forth as he shook his head. Before he collapsed, I saw blood flowing from his nose down to his upper lip, and his teeth were exposed in a painful expression. Through the locks of hair, I saw blood oozing from his ear, as if something inside had broken. I dropped the sandwich, uttered a few curses, and ran up to him, grabbing his wrist to see if it was seriously injured. No, he didn't want to let go of his hand, and I don't blame him. With that much blood, I would be afraid too. His eyes were cloudy as he looked at me and asked loudly if he could hear anything. He just looked at me blankly and groaned weakly, as if more disappointed than just being able to read my lips. Oh my God, I thought, his hands are completely messed up. He was still playing with the mic, which was still on, and his scream probably got broadcasted. I decided to keep his nightmare private by walking to the control table and muting both microphones. I let the music auto-play and returned to him. He had fallen down and was lying curled up, trembling in panic. He looked at me trying to say a few words, but before he could finish, his eyes rolled back and he passed out. I sat down across from him for a long time, my eyes going to the sandwich, which was now a feast for a few lucky ants, thinking that a benevolent God had given them gifts from nature. I left it as it is, not wanting to disappoint them. That's when I found the granola bars in a half-melted bag, but still a pleasant surprise. Perhaps I am my own God. After a while watching Daniel and writing a little more about my day, I saw he moved. He woke up in a dream, panting like he just woke up from a nightmare. His eyes roamed the dark room until he saw me coming towards him. He lay on his side so he could see my face clearly and understand what I'm asking. We were on the floor next to each other, like two kids at the worst sleepover ever. I got a pillow. His face was covered in blood. "Can you go to the bathroom by yourself?" he nodded, wanting to lie on a real mattress. "No," he hesitated, then nodded. I called an ambulance when he fainted, but I knew it would take a while to get here. Our town doesn't have a hospital, and whoever had to drive around the mountain will understand the trip was a nightmare until then. You can rest on the mattress in my staff apartment and sleep through the pain. I am surprised you got up quite easily, even though leaning definitely with two ears that have just been injured, and the balance will be worse. I let him sit down on the couch while I cleaned his face and ears so he could wash his hands. "Can you hear me?" I asked when both were in a quiet room. A moment later, he spoke in a low, whispered, hoarse voice, but I'm sure he didn't hear a little, and then he smiled. "Tomorrow she's friendlier when I am not listening." I should have smacked him on the shoulder for that sentence, but I just laughed and ignored it. It's strange taking care of someone else. I don't think I'm a gentle person, but I tried my best to wipe his face gently and take good care of him, help him go back to my room and rest. Oh God, his first day was probably the worst I can imagine right now. I really pity him. At first he was annoying, but now that he's quiet, silent even in a bad way, I don't find him even more disgusting. When he lay down with a slight grimace, I turned away, but not before he waved to me. I heard it again, he then judged, his voice weak and trembling, a roar of the Lord in the forest, as Rose said. I frowned, took a thin blanket from the plastic shelf, and put it on him. That is not God. What's scary is that, Dan, it's just a problem with your headphones. We will help. I'm fine. Take it easy and rest. I knit the rest of the evening there, at least until the ambulance came to pick him up. I decided to stay up all night at the desk, watching the radio broadcast without wearing headphones. After a while, I had a strange feeling, just sitting, watching spontaneous music, and trying to imagine who is listening out there, or not. Maybe I'm the only one. It's crazy how I went from hating Dan to suddenly missing him when he leaves, and completely losing the will to sleep. And yes, I know I lied to him, not your headphones. Whatever he listened to, it all seems so real, but he has been through too much. No need to add that to it. It was past midnight, and I heard the phone ringing again. Someone called me in the cage, and I took a deep breath through my nose and ignored the call. This is Evelyn from 104.6 FM, and her strange bird still perches on the windowsill. I never thought that ear surgery could be so simple. It doesn't mean it doesn't require craftsmanship and meticulousness, of course, but when I got a call from Daniel's mother one day, a wonderful woman, she said, with an outpatient surgery, they could fix one of Daniel's ears and maybe help him hear some in his remaining ear, at least enough to avoid infection. I always thought that the ear was a small and complex part of the body. Repairing the bone cavities and vibrating parts, such a sophisticated move, must have been a big, even dangerous rush. It turned out Daniel had surgery the morning after the accident with the headphones and was recovering. They think that he would hear well enough to continue work here, even though he might need hearing support when fully recovered. It'll probably serve him well. He probably won't come back to work in the next few days and will probably not wear headphones for a while, but in conversation with his mother, I heard him behind her. Tell her, he said, that you have not stopped harassing her yet. So maybe I still have a part-time employee, annoying he's just on a medical convalescence very early in the process. He thought I was here alone, and damn, that bird still won't leave. I noticed something when I looked out the window between giving the weather forecast and playing music without ads. It is under construction, that little bird's nest with dead eyes. The nematode built a nest right in front of where I sit all day. I like birds. I have no problem with any kind of wild animal, as long as it is not trying to attack part of my body or run away. But somehow, the last thing I want is to see this bird create a series of its own versions. I can imagine dozens of them standing in line around the window, staring at me from all directions, watching every move. I was going to go out and try to take the nest down in the woods, but I don't want to leave the station too long. Maybe I will wait until Dan comes back and ask him to look after it so I can get that thing far away from the station wave. I hate this damn bird. This morning before sitting down to work, I washed my face in the bathroom sink. It's silent, I know it's good, but it doesn't have to be quiet because of the water pipe noise Dan heard on his first day. He said that he heard crying from inside the tube, and that makes me feel uneasy. Even though I'm alone, I also heard it but thought it was just my imagination. I think loneliness set up here, suspended 50 m above the ground, and no one but the delivery man catches my head, makes me imagine sounds of people in places where they don't really exist. But he also hears it. Honestly, I'm a little disappointed by the silence. It didn't last long. The first time I noticed, I was going to convince Daniel that we have a community of underground people living in the water system as soon as he comes back. That joke doesn't solve the mystery, but at this point, humor is the only thing that keeps me rational. But if you ask me if I thought it was a ghost down there, no, or one person, no, I don't mind as long as it is just a sound and nothing else. I don't care where it comes from. I forgot that for a while, stopped thinking about anything or nothing in the sink, and continued with daily work. It's a clear blue sky day. The air is a bit cold but warm. If lightning is on the mountain, all is sadness and boring. But maybe I need a boring day after seeing a colleague's eardrum ripped the day before. I'd rather have a boring day than a bloody one. I sat down, put on my headphones, and waited for the music block to end automatically. I wished Daniel a speedy recovery, Belgian embassy. Lined up on the news console, Lan quickly went on to say that Daniel had gone through a minor surgical procedure. Anyone who has heard his scream of pain from last night knows it went away quickly. Pierce the gossip to ask deeply. There are at least 10 people in town who sent cards directly to the broadcasting station with letters I placed in the early morning in front of his chair as a pleasant surprise, love for the day he returns to me. I also put one for him, but no luck. The delivery man made a mistake and gave me a happy birthday card. I signed it anyway and put it up along with the other important cards. Good morning, this is Evelyn McKinnon with Radio 104.6 FM. I hope everyone is enjoying the sunny skies today. Daniel Esperanza won't join me this morning, but he wanted to send his thanks to everyone for the beautiful good wishes and can't wait to go back in this weekend. Stay for the forecast weather at 8:30 a.m. and now 30 minutes of continuous music, no ads, on 104.6 FM. The morning passed slowly. Wi-Fi was close, so I could sit near my desk and surf the net a bit, find news to talk about. I was in a state of depression, looking at the clock and waiting for time to pass. The internet is too slow to stream videos unless I want to see a strip screen, so most of the time, it's just staring into a dull screen until noon. I jumped when I heard the noise through my headphones. Even though the music was playing, it still called me. I think maybe it's a lover, or maybe Dan's mom called back, picturing Daniel praising me enough for her to invite me to her niece's wedding in a month. That woman is so lovely. I guarantee that the audio mixer will not call or voice mine with the music player, and with some hesitation I allowed my voice to say, the other side rang, this is Evelyn at 104.6 FM. How can I help you? There was a gasp on the other end of the line, a trembling sob, and the sound of a young woman inhaling through a stuffy nose. I recognize that sound. It is less strangled than ever, more clearly identified than the type of sobs I heard in the wash basin every day since I started work, and also the voice that Daniel heard. I felt a chill down my spine, like the cold wind you feel when stepping out of a warm building into a winter storm night. It does not come immediately, but gradually spreads from the top of my head down my back and down to the tip of every hair on my toes. My body stood up, every pore and freckle like stings. Then the words came out. She must stop. She was still sobbing, still breathing. She paused as if wanting me to answer. Are you okay? Oh God, stop making excuses, she interrupted, and immediately I was confused. What is she talking to me about? I'm so tired, this is my house, I want to help you, but she wouldn't let me do that. I wouldn't respond as if I was just listening to half of a conversation, like listening to a recording that has something in it that makes me feel familiar enough to make my stomach tighten. But thinking about it, I heard it before in the sink in the bathroom. Can I hear somewhere else? Please let me help, please. You have not been sober for a day since graduating. Immediately, I yanked the headphones out of my ears, pushed the chair back, and left the device suspended on a wire like a pendulum on the edge of the table, not for lack of reason. I felt so nauseous, sudden paralysis, stomach churning, and saliva filled my mouth. No time to wonder if I could hold back. I rushed into the bathroom with the call still going on, that voice still echoed and sobbed in the space. The dizziness hit me as soon as the door opened within reach. 3 steps to the sink felt like I'm walking in a spinning tunnel. Knees down, I fell and grabbed the edge of the toilet, trying to pull people closer. My hands were weak, but then the nausea turned into something else. I'm choking on it. If there was ever a time I needed a colleague here, it was at this moment. I lost my breath, and the colors around me became more dazzled. Silence in my vision as I was about to pass out with a desperate cough. I felt a pang when something popped out of my throat. My head hit the floor, but I saw it. I stared at something that somehow got into my body. It was a stone, just a stone, a brown speckled stone like the kind you can find out in the woods, maybe on the walking path, or from the river bottom, among other things you can choke on mysteriously without explanation. A stone that appears to be quite a bland item, but when you look at it out of pure frustration, it almost killed me. I just wanted to throw it away. My hand shivered as I pushed myself up, gripping the stone in my hand, thinking nothing of throwing it in the toilet and pressing the flush button. It disappeared into the water when I was there. I swear I heard a sob from the right, echoing from deep within the system, returning under the sink. I wiped my face on my sleeve and then washed my hands carefully before returning to the desk. My headphones were still dangling by the edge of the table. I slowly shook myself, picked them up, and put them on my head again, and only heard silence on the line. The woman on the other side turned off the call. The feeling of insecurity has not gone away. The bird that still hasn't gone away, worse than that, I saw it knocking its beak on the window, looking straight in. I want it in. I know this sounds crazy, like I know what it's thinking about. This bird is too human for me to recognize the light in its eyes, pleading, demanding, staring as I sat at the table. It just disappeared when it went to find food to build its nest. I won't let it in. There was a fog warning on Thursday. It is only Tuesday as I write this, but I still find myself staring through the woods, waiting for the hill of trees to start moving. I waited to see it explode, that fog coming from where I imagine it rising from underground, rising into the air and covering the town and the sun, all that my eyes can see, and the sound it can emit, a terrifying roar that makes the whole ground shake. Damn it, maybe I shouldn't have blocked Rose's number. This is Eveline from 104.6 FM, and I just saw a speckled brownstone lying on the ledge notebook with the words Class of 2017 written with white paint next to it. I don't know how it got there, but more importantly, who in this world dug that stone out of the toilet? To be honest, I never think I'm scared of Thursday coming. It's a pretty good day of the week, and I rarely hear anyone complain about hating Thursday. There is no cup with the 5th letter placed next to the terrible second cups. However, when 1 week passed slowly, all I can think of is a related warning. Another foggy day is coming soon, soon near. So my morning started again with a report script about a missing woman named Jennifer Cook, 25, believed to have gone into the woods in a sleepwalking state, and her state, for some reason, I am listed as critically endangered. I recognize her name, we were friends. At least one good thing happened. Daniel decided that a break was in order and returned to work early, 1 day later than expected, still recovering but strong enough to bother me. I almost regretfully admit that I miss him. People say you won't recognize yourself remembering something until it is taken away, and even this annoying debt is better than being completely lonely. The coffee machine has no choice. I saw his eyes light up when he saw the get well cards I put on his desk. He burst out laughing when he saw the card I got. "Leave me a happy birthday, Grandma." He smiled as he lifted the card and opened it. No good wishes or words, signed with only a doodle scene where he wears 2 stethoscopes. Beethoven stuck in my head and I know what to say. "I'm bored already. Thanks, Evelyn, you are such a thoughtful grandchild." After the morning weather report, when he joined me in announcing our return, we turned off the microphone to chat. Needless to say, the conversation didn't stop at just the usual stories. He told me about his surgery with lively, almost full excitement, and honestly, I found it quite interesting. Carefully, he tilted his head on both sides to show me the scar behind his ear and the surgical dressing still on the side. No wonder he still mainly reads my mouth shape, even though my ear has been cured. He can't hear anything when it's stuffed with cotton. Let's stop talking about knives, scissors, and sewing, and he asked me, "What's wrong?" Something strange happened that he missed in the sink. It's still weird when resting. The water pipe was leaking the other day. I think it cried louder than usual. "Tell me if there was any call," he asked. I hesitated but tried not to seem too nervous, reluctantly answering instead. I pretended to think and look back at some pale, bland, and completely unimportant memories before shaking my head. "There's nothing really, just some song requests. There's some guy in town who loves Diana Ross." Daniel hesitantly replied, eyes glued to my face, staring long after my lips stopped moving. I think my work completely avoided his eyes, the most obvious sign of concealment. I don't want to tell him about the crying woman on the call, the stone in my stomach, or any conversation that can be evoked from all of that, the uneasiness that the subject brings, so vague that I can't understand or want to volunteer to jump into it. "But that bird." "Hey," I interrupted him just as he was about to open his mouth, pulled my knees up onto the chair, and kicked off the table to roll away a little. I almost jumped off the chair to stride across the room, left my headphones, and pointed at the door. My collector is definitely scratching into the nest it built on the tree branch right at the edge of the notebook. She doesn't like the nest. "Why?" Daniel asked, as if there was still any doubt about my feelings. "It'll give birth to a bunch of ugly chicks right in front of our radio room." I leaned my hand on the glass and sighed, discouraged, but even though I knocked on the glass, the bird still did not fly away. It just looked, turned its face to one side to let one human eye follow my every move. If its beak could laugh, it would laugh at me. "I will clean that nest away." "Wait, I know it looks weird, but she didn't intend to kill it, did she?" I asked him not to kill it. I showed him back to the table to hang up my headphones right where I leaned against the back of the empty chair, face to face with my colleague, to explain my plan. "My plan is to go out by the fire exit to get the nest and bring it into the forest. I will not harm it, I just move it somewhere else. I need you to control the broadcast station while I go, bro." He can't wear headphones, but that doesn't matter as long as he can keep the music playing without letting the signal get interrupted while I'm out. Planning the plan will be simple and effective. I still try to understand this urgent feeling. I need to clean that nest, and it needs to be done immediately. I have to leave the station to get to the exit. I know that completely defeats the purpose of the escape route, but it's not worth activating the alarm just to save some steps and explain this silly obsession to the boss while turning it off. That requires going down iron stairs that clang around down below until I lower the altitude of 50 m. Rusty spiral stairs down to the cold cement floor, bamboo chutes, a sign of no exit, bright, but the window on the door shines out the dull yellow light of the overcast sky. Except when my feet hit the tall grass, small pebbles shot up from the dry ground. I feel a very small world. It seems big, and I am small and suffocating somewhere in between that vast, endless space. It's the first time in over a week I feel the breeze on my skin, and something about standing in the airiness makes me uncomfortable under the roof. I don't feel free, I feel as if violated, like a baby without guidance. I decided to quickly tie my shirt into the belt, clinging to both sides of the escape path when climbing. I glimpsed out to the mountains, the high, jagged hills with trees and brooms. Looking at the horizon makes me feel tense. That tension coalesced into a mass curled up in my belly like a real stone. So I don't need more stones in my stomach, you dead bird. When I reached the top, gasping for air from absolute exhaustion, I waved to chase the bird away. This time it really flew away, but that doesn't bring me so much comfort. It left the nest, not in panic, as if it were not afraid. I just moved it to another place, as if to say, I just moved because I want to. Through the bars, I got the nest, removed it from the tree branch. Even though I hate this bird and have no hesitation about it, I can't carry the nest too roughly. Tell me to be careful lifting the nest up, but I still held my breath anxiously when looking at the circle of branches and animal hair. Removed without eggs, the nest was empty, but with a feeling of disgust and all the nerves in my body wanting to throw that damn thing away as fast as possible, I threw the nest with strength and wiped my hands on my waist when I saw it fly into the forest. The nest landed in the center, mined like precious fragile eggs. The price was 4 chewed-off human fingers to the small joint and nail fragment. The red paint was partially chipped by then. I heard the sliding sound behind, the wetness of something dragging on the needle type of stairs. That sound-inducing nausea only added to the cold feeling running down my arm and neck. I turned back, prepared to face whatever creature just crawled out of the woods, and found a thick, muddy rope climber that climbed all the way up the rusted iron bars and hung over the steps. The first ladder I saw was a bird with human eyes, a sink with a human voice, but God forbid this tree also has personality. I hurriedly left the exit and went back to the station. I stepped over the wet vine, ready to hear the sound of shoes on the next step, but there was no sound. Instead of a climbing rope, it was slippery and agile, like the first wire always under my feet, then another wire and another wire, at least 3, wherever it fell under my feet. I slipped and fell down every step. I think that's what will happen as soon as I'm off balance. I felt something slippery wrap around my ankles. Some vine grabbed my leg and used incomprehensible power to throw me away like a fly, slapping me hard like I was a pest. Here was a moment I looked down at my feet, and the next second I saw the ground 50 m away, a distance when starting to fall, but I may not survive. I waved, trying to grab the edge of the stairs, but fell down and hit my chest on an iron bar on the spiral just below the top. My breath squeezed, arms tightly around the iron bar, when pain flared up in my shoulder and elbow because I had to bear the weight of my body kicking, legs up and around the nearest bar, until clinging to the edge of the forest spread out in front of me. At first I just saw a sea of blue, then I saw the movement on the horizon, the thick fog clouds swirling slowly towards the broadcasting station and town. And for the first time since I started work here, I heard a moan in the wind. It is not thunder, it's a low groan, like a whale call that we imagine echoes up from the bottom of the sea. That fog emitted a sound like a living creature. My own voice shouted a few curses mixed with panic when using all my strength to pull myself up the steps. I chose arm pain over a long fall. I pulled myself up and fell down on the metal floor. When I stood up, my shirt caught in a corner and tore to pieces. The debris fluttered like flags. I swear at that time that if I saw another bird's nest near the fire escape, I will leave the damn thing alone. I will organize a welcome party if that helps prevent everything that happened again. Since the sky cleared by afternoon, some things became clear to me. I received more than one angry call from the network owner, who said we took too long to play the scene to inform the people below about a change in town. A couple last seen walking near the bushes miles and miles from home after the fog cleared. And of course, we reported the missing person instantly. I also have a large bruise that appeared on my chest from the fall, and I had to say it hurt like hell. We reported the fingers to the police, their hands making sure there are no killers here, though it sounds easier to handle than I was quite surprised when the police requested a copy of the calls we had recorded from last week. Luckily, the station rules mean no recording is deleted or overwritten as beautiful. Only one missing record is Daniel's call. He took over just in time for his hearing loss. Why did the boss delete that call? After copying it, I happened to hear whispers about whose finger that could belong to. It says missing girl Jennifer could be a victim of an animal attack while sleepwalking, caused by a new sleeping pill prescription that she had just started taking. I decided when I finish here, I will review the call transcripts from the past few days. I got a call from a woman with insomnia in my head, and maybe I will realize that phone number if I see it again. I doubt it might match some of the ones I still have in my personal phone. Honestly, I hope I'm wrong. There are many things I need to explain when knowing the truth here. This is Evelyn from Radio 104.6 FM, and maybe I'll take a walk in the following forest. So the problem is like this. Outside, the dark forest seemed to come alive, and she wanted to go out there and find a damn Zenio. He just worked here a few days, and he started talking on par with me. Then I quickly glanced at him with a cold look. He just sat on the floor and tied his first shoelace. If fingers are the only part of her that leaves the body, maybe there is no death yet. She may still be alive. After the last time I sat down to write my thoughts and experiences, I decided to review all of the calls that came in the last few days, not looking for recordings but phone numbers, something I rarely pay attention to. My heart felt like it was falling down when I saw that, unfortunately, my guess was absolutely correct. The phone in our machine matches the mobile number that I saved under the name Jenny, a college friend that I know well, same career last year, but with one surprise that I did not expect. Jennifer didn't just call the radio station once, she called twice. The first time to tell me about a bird that has eyes that made her lose sleep a lot. The second time in a row, I heard the cry and plea of a woman on the phone. That person was her. Maybe people are right, no one hears like me when passing the phone. I will go with you, Daniel. The person on the chair was about to stand up, and I looked at him with eyes of disbelief. I won't go, I think I sound strict, but he did not listen. Even though just for a moment, he stood up, leaning over the console and adjusted the playlist. We can't leave the radio station empty. No one will look after that strange bird or whatever is a ghost in the toilet. Sorry, that is the sink, not the toilet, but I have an idea and you're not kidding about your idea at the time. It sounds silly and impossible at first, but the more I think about it, the more I realize that it can be done. He said we should record all the programs for the evening. We will record the evening weather report, news at 10 hours, and even a good night wish, then put those recordings in the playlist with the rest of the songs. No one will know, and if time is longer than expected, we just need to set the automatic broadcast schedule to transfer to the 6-hour night music block. I was supposed to leave at 10 o'clock, Daniel reminded me. He is just a part-time employee vs. full-time for me. It means staying here forever. It's almost 9 o'clock now. She doesn't think that I will get overtime if anyone finds out we're wandering in the forest. No wandering at all. But I will pay extra for the delivery guy to bring some donuts if you need to make it up to me, he said as if to comfort me. I don't believe I will actually do it. I can't believe I let Daniel get me into this. Honestly, I don't know what scares me more, going into the woods at night and touching rebroadcasting, or going alone and leaving responsibility for Daniel. I'm not saying he's impotent, but I'm almost sure that a wild beast running through the console radio can operate it just as well as he can. He still has to learn so much. We started to implement the plan to record all segments at once. If lucky, it will sound like a live chat. Next, when everything was ready and the radio set to play music automatically until near dawn, Daniel and I raided the locker. Flashlight, bottle of water, and a first aid kit for the room. I just hope that I won't have to reattach any fingers, but gloomy findings today have made that possibility from unworthy mentioning the Than story. Not sure, but it may happen. Going out this second time was as scary as the first time, maybe because the fog blindness will not appear for several days, or maybe because there is an important goal wait that makes me forget the feeling of smallness. I pulled my phone out of my pocket, looked at the small wave bars in the corner of the screen. Here, with the wall of trees surrounding and the forest that seemed to stretch on forever, mountains are dangerous without connection with the outside world. I saw the wave line disappear as we approached. We kept walking, wet leaves rustled under my feet. I've never been here, at least not at this hour. Daniel shined the flashlight on the ground and then up the tree trunks at eye level. I hate when you do that. I have a fear that you will suddenly shine the light up and see something horrible. He knows the way I'm trying to remember. I left town very early and far away so long ago that all memories of playing in the forest now disappeared. However, I remember some discrete memory fragments, but they seem to disappear as if the thoughts flowed straight out of my mind. I've been here for about the last year, but I don't remember the exact route much like. But anyway, we can see the radio tower from a long distance. Daniel shrugged and nodded in acceptance in reply. He looked back at where the needle hit our wood and timber standing tall on top of the giant tower above, so much so that it is almost impossible not to see it from everywhere on this side of the forest area. I looked straight ahead into the darkness, squinted as Daniel handed over the flashlight back to touch. I held my flashlight off to save battery in case his light was out of battery, but I had to admit that his constant pranks with that damn flashlight will annoy me if he keeps stopping. "Can you go again?" I said sternly. Daniel stared at me asking, "Don't play with the flashlight again," I answered, raising my voice. "I say don't play with it again." Before I could finish, a sound from the front was loud enough for Daniel to hear through the mask. It was the sound of an animal, either aggressive or self-defense. Daniel replayed his flashlight straight to the source of the sound while I stood still. It was a deer, a huge elk with bright white eyes up in the dark. It stood still as if it had been there from the beginning, unaware that its antlers were hitting the trees around as it shook its head and stomped its feet before going down to the ground. Dan and I both stepped back a few steps, but the deer did not dip in. We replaced it when we had made enough noise and stomped its feet. It turned around and stared at us for a while. Its eyes were like two reflective balls of light, but then I saw it blink. Its eyelids closed from the sides like a reptile's eyes, then with heavy breathing, it ran deeper into the forest area. I realized between moments, thinking I was scared to death, that it had a strange running gait. It had 3 legs, one side had 1 leg, and the other side had 2, a completely deformed animal. There is nothing here that doesn't look like an absolute deformity. Daniel, in his hoarse whisper, slowly scanned with his flashlight for anything else that might be hiding in the dense trees. With no sound for a few seconds, we continued walking, even though I think screaming is probably not the best idea. I saw on my phone, paying attention to the signal bars in the left corner. I don't think there will be a signal here, but strangely, one wave bar appeared. I fell down the stairs, she admitted, but said nothing more. I rolled down the stairs and hit strongly on the bar. They could not ask more, but it didn't mean they forgot that detail. It's hard to bear to see them attentively observe and record every detail, even if it's their job. They still make me feel stressed. A while later, an hour passed, and the police only stopped asking when Evelyn or I had to take care of business to keep the airwaves going. They are very attentive to making sure everything is smooth, but they also have to live in this town at the foot of the mountain. There cannot be strange things around here again. In their eyes, they probably know more than we do about this old radio station. I think I'm the first one to see the movement in the forest. I took a breath of surprised horror, and the police probably heard it too because immediately they hurried to the window to see teammates coming out of the jungle. The paramedics brought out 2 stretchers covered with white sheets, 2 stretchers, just the 2 of us. "Please stay in the radio room until..." The police turned back to Evelyn and said nothing, but looked very scared when people below glanced up at the place. "We have something wrong." Evelyn went back and forth until the police returned to the room, a person carrying something familiar, Jennifer's dead phone. Damn, a female cop with gloves on her hand held up the phone, low battery, and 2 missed calls from last night. That phone battery must be dead, I think, but somehow it survived the night to reveal the secret of Evelyn's pale face when she saw my name flashing on the screen picture. But the next words of the police were more chilling than all the truth that flew out before our eyes. Miss McKinnon, it seems as she and Jennifer Cook have been in contact. Any information about her whereabouts you haven't told us yet? My heart sank, and I know her heart sank too. So she looked at the 2 people in front of her and then looked at me, mouth slightly open with a question, unable to utter a word about her whereabouts. Jennifer was out there, she was cold and died in the tree trunk. And if they found her phone and 2 people, how else did they not see her? That's the only answer I can think of. She is not there anymore. But if so, who or what pulled her out of the tree? I knew her lips, Evelyn, run, run. I never saw her look almost crying like that. I don't even know how much she cried, not yet, since Jennifer was reported missing. Evelyn tried not to talk about their relationship before. I forgot that she was perhaps sad after that indifference. I just thought of her and tried calling, but she didn't pick up the phone when I called. We haven't talked in over a month. I swear I don't know anything this time. You're not lying. This new situation makes us fall into darkness, made me doubt everything I saw that night. There is no way we both had the same dream, right? Not when all the other details fit together. The other 2 bodies were collected, but Jennifer was taken away while the 2 others were left behind. I can't think of any reason. Oh my God, even a chilling thought crossed my mind that maybe it was Jennifer who got out of that tree. There were too many strange things in the woods, and I'm not ready to take care of the deceased. Evelyn's answer is legit, real, but not good enough for them to decide that the situation appeared at the wrong time. This is not enough to satisfy the policewoman. For Evelyn, on the other hand, she placed it near the rose, not her gun, but her handcuffs. Evelyn must have looked down there because right away the policewoman immediately withdrew her hand again. We have more questions, but we want to wait until the station to have a real talk, the policewoman said. If I don't resist, you will not handcuff me, Evelyn asked, continuing to look out from behind the hair covering the female police officer's face. She looked at her, then silently nodded to her colleague. I am not an emotional person. She often looks tired or annoying, sometimes it's both, but this time she looked at me with a heavy face and eyes that can be called sad. I know she's scared, but not the kind of scared we have faced before with unreal things. This is a fear so real that there is no doubt it is the saddest image I've ever seen. Follow the rules, okay? That's the last thing I read from Evelyn's lips before she was escorted away to interrogation. I want to know what happened to Evelyn, but unfortunately, I can't do that. I have to make sure the radio never goes quiet. This is Daniel from Radio 104.6 FM, and maybe I'll be your host for the program one more time. Another type of computer is the fastest way to turn friends into enemies, but I can still justify his actions. Among all the mysterious and horrifying stories that Evelyn and I have witnessed, the invasion of her posts is not the biggest sin. At least it's not as bad as murder. Well, first, I think you need to know that it's been a few days and I haven't received any news from her. Her career seems to have turned lost from this world. I have to manage the radio and everything myself. It's no longer strange as usual, no cry coming from the sink, no strange bird outside the window, no fog, but I still feel insecure because the police are still constantly scouring the woods for the body of Jennifer. The feeling they still can't find her. I met the policewoman again before dragging Evelyn along when they brought 2 bodies out of the woods. She looked still as serious and cold as before, but at least she let me ask questions. I asked when and if they will keep an eye out for when Evelyn will be done with her responsibility in this case. I tried to act like a worried apprentice, waiting for her to give me an estimate to see when I can see Evelyn again, especially after I emphasized that this sudden full-time job is quite difficult to get used to. But if you ask me, then I advise you not to use the emotional guilt move for the police. Not sure, she said calmly. It's up to her cooperation. We have not been able to verify her. Ask her to see a doctor immediately. She refused to say anything before she got treatment. Plus, I shouldn't be surprised, but still, Evelyn doesn't look the best, but I don't think she would accept going to the hospital in times of chaos like this. No, I feel like something else is going on. Happens plus all the weird stuff that we saw, and my curiosity about what she witnessed in the days I was away. That's all that urges me to check her computer every day when I have free time, and now I know she hides a lot of things from me rather than many things. Thinking of her scattered documents filled with editing and unfinished writing about her daily experiences, it seems as she always avoids going into detail on a lot of things. That afternoon, quite gloomy, I just had a late lunch and left half in Evelyn's fridge. She didn't touch it and then decided to read all her old posts. The stone, the woman crying in the temple, something in my bones, as if she couldn't believe what she had hidden from me, but still had the feeling that many of them are personal. She should have stopped there, but I didn't. I'm ashamed to admit that curiosity prevailed, and I searched her browsing history. Weak as they still are, these articles, I mean, it seems she spends most of her time writing but still has some other things. One page on Facebook remaining notable looks like a product of boredom. Articles, some stupid quiz, and a search for mountain birds. I told myself I was just visiting her Facebook long enough to check her personal page. She's still logged in. It turns out she's not logged out yet because as soon as the page finished downloading after a long time, the activity had been mass announced, reading on screen so much that it seems Evelyn did not read through them in many weeks, and also very little posting. Part of the large content on her personal page is from someone else who has a relative who may be asked how she's doing, and she did not reply to a girl who tagged Evelyn with a few others in a group hangout post. She gave no response, and then a movie letter where someone else tagged her. I admit that I smiled at first looking at them. They are probably from last summer because Evelyn's hair is shorter, and she has a sunburn on her nose along with a few sunspots with pictures from the holiday, college graduation photos with friends and the professor. She smiled, showing her jaw teeth, looking very bright, a good photo. The last job was to take a picture of her and someone familiar, a woman making faces at that camera. It's Jennifer. As I continued watching, I saw Jennifer appear more than most in the pictures she took. Lan and I went hiking today on moving day with Lynn, Evelyn, and Jenny, the champion lifter of chairs and sofas. Then there's a dark and blurry photo that was the first of many next pictures. Someone tagged an album, Evelyn and at least 15 others, full of photos shot in the woods. My smile began to disappear seeing that forest and the obscure faces of strangers, either drunk or in a haze, making the photos look like a ghost world. Then I saw her. Evelyn appeared in the background of some couple shots, so small that I had to look closely to catch her smiling in a couple of pictures, then another picture. The photo chilled me to the bone. Evelyn stood at the edge of the group, as if being pulled into the frame when passing by, but her face was pale, and her eyes were wide and bright because of the flash of the camera. The expression on her face showed clear fear. Something happened to her, obviously seeing something she didn't want to see. I can't take my eyes off the picture any faster, so I went through it all time and time again. She appeared in most of the pictures, always holding a cup, and I saw the change from fear, scared, tired to the point of almost fainting when two of her friends had to support her from behind, or was she drugged or drunk or both? Then both she and Jennifer disappeared from the rest of the photos, leaving no trace. I regret lingering too long on the pictures because my online status, or rather Evelyn's, caught someone's attention. A message appeared in the corner of the screen. Her message was the height of a privacy violation, but I cannot resist again a glimpse of Evelyn. Hey, can you read these lines? Don't kill me for this. I scrolled to see that it was someone I've never met, but Jennifer was one of the two in his profile picture. Not very important because he made his intentions clear. I went through a series of at least 20 unanswered messages for a month. His name is Elijah. April 2, this Linny, I say, is it okay? April 5th, she is where? Are you okay? April 18th, Jen asked about her so much, she really wanted her to leave. Block me. April 23rd, Evelyn, please. And when I scrolled up more, I saw the first message open the curtain for all that. First day of April, hello Evelyn, Jen told me what happened. Hope you get well soon, but please be careful from now on. You can't keep taking care of her forever just to make sure she didn't drown in the tub. She knows there is a program to help anonymously for these things, right? You should try it. Jen cares about her, but she prefers a sober Evelyn over a. Other unread messages have more I'm confused about below, but still curious. I scrolled down and saw Elijah just left a few short, frustrating text messages just seconds ago. Answer me, where's my girlfriend? I know, right, Evelyn? I know you're there. While reading, he was typing, and seconds later another message appeared. They all died in that mountain, one by one. I closed the browser and hurried to shut the laptop as fast as possible, as if his words suddenly made me scared, like if I stayed on that page, I would see and read more scarier things. I want him to say, one by one they died. Who are they? People who used to work here, people who left. I'm still not sure about the words when I climbed the mountain. Is he a threat or a concern? I'm not a detective, but I'm worried that everything here is not random. I know my colleague will read these lines, and I apologized to her before, but I can't pretend that all of this is unrelated. Mandarin. Evelyn, if you read this, I hope you can remember what I saw that night in the forest. I intended to post this earlier, stop at the paragraph above, but I'm glad I didn't. It's dark now as I continue writing, and what happened outside the radio station, I gradually understood the weight of having to do all-night work. It's most boring when just alone and stressed, making me always nervous. I was installed with hearing aids received just a day or two before. 3-minute music, free time. I walked around the room and took a few minutes to look out the window in the pale purple light of sunset. I saw something attractive. There was a man out there standing straight but swaying from side to side on the other side. I would have suspected this was something unnatural with the number of times the forest teased us both, but I realized it was him. The food delivery service to the station twice a day. He stood with his back to me, staring at me while stopping to follow up, hoping he doesn't go further. The last words Jennifer's boyfriend sent her echoed in my head again. Everyone died on that mountain. One look back, I did one of the stupidest things I can do at that point. I know that's the guilty thought, but 3 people died in the forest within a few days, even just a few hours. I don't want to prove another person got lost and was pulled out of there in a body bag. I went back to the radio room, ran down the long, winding stairs to the exit. Almost nothing to see, only dim light leading the way. When I opened the door and ran out to call him, he turned back. I saw only 1 foot of him as he stepped into the darkness in the middle of the forest through the bushes. I said I'm stupid, that's right, but I'm not stupid. I did not chase into the area. I yelled at him to come back, but he didn't seem to notice me there. My eyes fell to the ground. I saw he dropped a cardboard box he delivered late again. When I bent down to pick it up, the sound of a branch breaking and the rustling of leaves made me think it was him turning back to realize his mistake, but it wasn't the delivery man. It was much more terrible. I saw Jennifer walking out of the woods towards me. I'm just not sure the steps were correct. She had a broken back and twisted leg, bent in ways that made me hear her bones creaking. Her arm rotated back at the shoulder, her wrist hung limply as if about to fall off. She staggered towards me, taking only steps, relying on the leg that still had some strength, looking like a muddy puppet with a driver who doesn't know what he's doing. Her hair was caught in dry branches, dead leaves, and long grass. Her mouth opened wide. The sound emitted was real, abnormal, like gasping for breath with deep growls. I didn't wonder if she saw me. Her eyes were white, and her head was shaking back on her broken neck. Without thinking, I left the box on the ground. Even though nothing in it mattered anymore, I ran straight to the foot of the tower, almost rushed in, and slammed the door and locked it immediately. I glanced out the wrong window. Jen was standing right next to the door, her face pressed against the glass. I don't know how she got there so fast, and I really don't care. In that second moment, all I wanted was to get as far as possible. I ran up the stairs. Fear and adrenaline took me to the top without needing to stop. I don't care about the delivery man anymore. Locked in the radio room was the only thing I wanted, plus sunlight, but there were still many, many hours to go in the morning. I locked her room door as far away from the door as possible, away from the window, for fear I'd see her climbing the fire ladder. Her face I cannot erase floated in my mind near midnight as I wrote. I just got a call and never felt so relieved when hearing someone else's voice. When lifting it, I just hoped to hear someone answer, just a living, breathing person, someone to talk to. "Daniel, is that you?" If my heart skipped a beat, Evelyn's voice sounded tired, but no doubt it was her. "Where are you?" I asked, ignoring all greetings. I think she heard the worry in my voice. Please don't tell me you're in. They didn't arrest me. I think they wanted to find a reason, but I will be home early, maybe before 6 o'clock am. That's all I can promise. I will explain everything when we meet again." She must have heard me breathing, relieved by her voice. "Next, you look worried. What's wrong?" "I'm fine," was a lie, but I'm not ready for that discussion. "Just be careful. I will be back, you agree?" she said gently, but I could feel that she called just to let me know she was alive and on the way back. "Tomorrow, there's a big storm. High winds and thunder may cause a power outage." She didn't need to explain the worrying reason that this radio station is like the center of all weird things that happened on the mountain, and now I'm alone here struggling. Suddenly, I felt a sense of this place that I've never received before. I realized my life had changed. "How have you changed since working here, Evelyn?" I whispered. "What was that?" I glanced out the door, surprised and relieved when Jennifer was no longer standing there, but I saw a small but creepy scene. Long grass and dead leaves and hair garbage on the stairs forming a path leading down each step she took. How long did it stand there before it disappeared? "As soon as there are more part-time employees, this is Daniel. We are going on vacation from Radio 104.6 FM, and I never expected one morning to come early, so there's so much to tell. But I really don't know where to start. First of all, I want to make this clear. I, Evelyn, went back to the radio station around 5:45 a.m. the day before or 2 days ago. I confess I'm not sure how long I've been here. I yelled at him for a while and locked him in the bathroom for about 50 minutes before realizing he was just really trying to help and clear things up. Though why do I still wish he wouldn't have groped my social media account. Now I have to add a 30-year-old guy face down on my to-do list. Never thought of doing that at work in the past. While I was away, I saw and heard so much that I had to sit down and tell it all from beginning to end. The storm is coming, and the lights flashed a few times because of the strong wind. I was typing as fast as possible because, honestly, I don't know what will happen after I post this. When the police came to pick me up from the radio station, they showed no sign that they were questioning me as a suspect in Jennifer's murder. I was neither handcuffed nor locked into the cell, but they didn't want me out of sight until there was a call. The game moved carefully. However, as soon as I got there, I was checked strangely thoroughly. A woman wearing gloves shined a small flashlight into my eyes and told me to take off my coat. They checked my arm immediately, making me suspect they think I'm high on radio station medicine, and the test took so long I had to go through a pile of unnecessary tests and examinations before sitting down. Everything, my belongings, were confiscated except for my pants and shirt. When one of the investigators arrived to interrogate me in a private room at the police station, I spoke frankly about the difficulty. "Listen to me, I'm not a jerk addict. I may sound a bit harsh. I think we came here to talk about you. We will talk about it," he said, sitting down at the other end of the table. To my harshness, he seemed more concerned than critical or judgmental, but because of what I was exposed to, they need your consent for a comprehensive medical examination before starting. My head was exposed to what? I asked, still unclear about what he meant. The radio station. If there's anything dangerous in the air, I have to know what I'm getting into. The investigator shook his head. It's not discharge or toxic gas, sir. He folded his arms on the table and continued, "We meet a lot of sick or injured people while in the woods, and even though we cannot explain, we have learned how to treat anyone who spends a lot of time in the forest." I just arrived but felt confused, as if there were too many hidden things I want to know but am not allowed to understand. The inspector said nothing more and just pushed the paper before me. "We need her consent to a medical examination, comprehensive, and an overnight stay. After making sure she's okay, tomorrow we will talk about my friend. What can I do?" It's strange to deny everything weird, but I admit I'm curious to know all about how it relates to the radio station. It seems like this is an implicit plan or a truth that I have not yet been told, but everyone around already knows full well. I agreed to let them check blood samples and pretty much anything they wanted. They asked a lot about the bruise on my chest, but when they knew it must be a real injury, not a blood disease, they allowed me to rest for the night before meeting again tomorrow morning. The next morning I met the investigator again, a middle-aged man with dark skin and a deep voice, quite smooth, but I still felt he was not alone. I tried to remove the plastic bracelet around my wrist with the adhesive layer. Evelyn Faye McKinnon. Fingernails, I didn't ask, but he confirmed it, flipped through the documents, and I started to get impatient. She has been arrested twice in 12 months, both times for drunk driving. She and her old roommate, I corrected her, and her old roommate Jennifer Cook were fined once for public disorderly conduct. We just argued. I just got out of the hospital and she started preaching about my idea. His voice was stern and made me silent immediately. Let him tell us we have her fingerprints, and we matched them with a fingerprint sensor on Jennifer Cook's phone that we found half a mile from her worksite next to a tree filled with blood. I frowned. This is not what I expected to hear. Unless people are talking about a plastic tree, he must have felt the question. What do you mean by a tree filled with blood? I asked. I said the tree was oozing several liters of blood from a hole in the middle of Jennifer's trunk, and her phone, both hers and her fingerprints, were found. I saw him looking at me under that tree, staring coldly like he was waiting for a question or an answer cure. I did nothing, I answered once. He interrupted me again, but this time his words both relieved and confused me more. No one thought she hurt her, both, he said, but we need to know what she saw there, anything she may have witnessed. We received an anonymous call that said there were 3 bodies in the woods, and it's clear that the 3 bodies have not been found. It is very, very important that we must find her body as soon as possible more. The urgency in his voice shocked me. I can understand Jennifer's family would like to get her body back, but the way he looked at me was almost desperate, as if finding her body is more important than her family needing her. In the tree, I explained, even though I know the story will sound crazy, she was stuffed in the middle of the tree. I don't know how she could lay there but her face in one hand. She was dead with her mouth hanging open, the bird's nest, and that's where she was when I left. He nodded slowly, and I knew that wouldn't help them in searching. They must have searched that area at least a dozen times already. More, he asked with raised eyebrows. Did you see anyone or anything? I wondered what strange thing he wanted. I have dozens of strange stories, oh yes, a lot, but to what extent will it be said so crazy no one else saw? I saw a strange moose with 3 hind legs that looked very weird. Also strange, the other 2 bodies were lying on the ground and trees were divided into fragmentary sections, but can only be divided into fragments. The officer asked me to look at him, wondering why he didn't know. The other 2 were split in half, that's the detail recognizable as both man and woman. All had their legs cut off, the man, and the upper half of the woman was hung from a tree as if thrown up. It sounds crazy, but it's true what happened. He turned over the pile of documents, took out some photos and files. I just glanced at it, but realized the bloody grass and the color of the cloth from the clothing of one of the bodies. With a sigh, he took out a picture and pulled it before me that was clearly shown, but the photo was taken from far enough away to show the whole scenery around. I winced as I saw the shape of 2 bodies from a distance, and the blood-stained tree now standing empty. Jennifer was there, however. What made me surprised was the branches were completely bare. The curse left no trace of the man's legs or the upper half of the woman who lived there. They were there. I saw the woman and her face. I stuttered. The investigator got up from the chair, took out the phone, called some number, and turned his back on me. "Mister," I spoke softly, but I could still hear his voice. He looked urgent, not only her now, but three. He said, rubbing his forehead with his other hand, frowning tensely, "They were obviously left, but if we don't find her, others must have already lost. If that's true, it's too late. They became part of it." He hung up and turned back to sit across from me. My head was swirling with what was going on. I asked, annoyed, part of something. Why did he ask about those strange animals? I thought we were looking for Jennifer. That's important, but don't worry, he said for sure. If it's important, then I should know. I'm there. I'm the one providing all the information for you in the test. What the hell is that medical? What's the danger? Without anyone telling us. I looked at the investigator, who leaned back in his chair, keeping a cool and calm face like before. He waited for me to finish, but in his eyes there was a hint of hesitation, like I'm asking too much. But when I didn't leave, he had no other way but to lean towards me and said, "Some people go missing, maybe dozens a year on that mountain. Sometimes the body is found, sometimes not, but they never come back to be the same, not just us humans. We hire rangers to collect animal carcasses in the woods, but too often they also don't return again." I was silent for a long time, trying to understand everything he said was nonsense. "What will they become? We don't explain," he said hoarsely, "but sometimes people tell strange things they saw, a rabbit with a human ear or bushes growing fingers instead of leaves. Once an old woman almost scared her son to death because she tried to seduce a deer into the woods and said it had her husband's eyes. Her husband had collapsed and died on the sidewalk a month before, and she said he entered that deer. It makes me sick thinking about eyes. I don't need to imagine what that damn bird, I started wondering whose eyes it belonged to." The investigator continued, "We don't know what's in the air. Gas makes people see these things, but when the fog season comes, more and more people go missing and more strange monsters appear, all gathered. There may be interference around your workplace. Death could be something underground. We don't know." He leaned closer to the table. I didn't say a word. I just sat there, sighing as he looked at me with serious eyes. "One thing we know for sure, the past 5 years we have hired 27 people to work at the radio station there. She and Boy Esperanza, she is the 28th, he is the 29th. Even though it's cliché, I felt my heart really sink to the bottom. All confidence, sense of security vanished immediately. But there's one thing that concerned me with a detail that appeared in my head that I just put together. You hired him, not to avoid the question, but I sat still for a long time before answering. Finally, with him shaking his head, leaning against the tower chair, broadcasting is more than a single radio station. By now, you probably know that. People around here feel safer when just thinking about music, and that's our goal, keep everyone calm, static, until a solution is found for this forever. Now everything is clearer, why the tower is so high, why we must continuously broadcast the song, just be the cover that covers a defensive mission. It's a radio station watchtower, not for entertainment, but for protection. If the station stops broadcasting forever then, I asked, my voice mixed with fear. The person opposite shrugged, sighed heavily. We don't know and don't want to know. The fog once covered the whole town, and we think it's likely to spread depending on us, and the things in the fog captured the couple and turned them into lost ghosts before the fog entered my eyes. I saw what happened, and next time the fog comes down, maybe we will see them again. He stood up and clapped gently on my shoulder while I sat there, my mind numb. She should go back to the station, number 28. That morning, I took the bus back to the broadcasting station before sunrise, but I stopped by for a while earlier in the hour of dawn. I went to Jennifer's house, where she used to live, and where her boyfriend Elijah is alone now. I didn't knock on the door or ring the bell, but put a small piece of paper under the door. A photo, the only thing I had of Jennifer. I kept it in my wallet next to my parents' picture. Now it belongs to him. When I got to the tower, I met Daniel, and after a fight, I got out and told him everything I knew, gave him too much information, and he tried to accept it, but I felt better knowing that neither of them are blind now, who is dimmer than those who have hired us. It's not a radio network I work for, it's an agency, or the town government. That's the reason our signal only reaches the world. There's no reason to extend the deadline. He looked overwhelmed, and I didn't blame him. Honestly, I also wasn't feeling any better. I'm worried about weird things moving on, understanding that many people will be in danger if we fail. When I told Daniel about previous employees, he was visibly panicked. When they disappeared, what will happen to them? His voice was weak. They die or quit. I don't think they. We stopped talking and were silent for a while, both thinking the same thing. How long will we last, and if not, which one of us will go first? The sound of thunder interrupted everyone's thoughts. Both of us startled and looked out the window where heavy clouds came and covered the sky, and the distant trees began tossing in the wind. Lightning tore across the gray sky, followed by a roar like from an angry god. "Evelyn, is there a generator here?" he asked as the radio lights first flashed. The radio immediately jammed into a screech, and then another clap of thunder from the mountain. "Where is it?" I frowned, looking at him with an apologetic look outside. "This is number 28 from the emergency broadcast station 104.6. A fog warning is in effect. Keep calm and stay still." The forest house seemed to come alive. Even before the fog came, we had seen it wriggle in a rage, like there was an electric current running through every tree every day. Thunder roared in the bushes, lightning flashed morning on the mountaintop. I wondered if a forest fire is a thing, better unclear. Even death could not stop Jennifer and many others from returning in monstrous form, and I thought to myself, burning those things only creates more danger for us, not to go around anymore. We were so scared we understood enough, saw enough to know that this place is not safe when the rain comes down on cables and power lines, a fierce battle around the broadcast tower. And I'm not only worried about my safety, but also for everyone in town at the foot of the radio tower. These are keeping the town alive. I am keeping the town alive, an alcoholic and a failed stage actor. Who would have thought black would flash, causing radio waves to interrupt and transmit into cacophony as I frantically found a way to bring the sound back. Just in a few short seconds of silence, scary, then it exploded again with the vibration from under my tower. I saw Daniel grimacing and holding next to his ear as soon as the wave came back on, and music filled the air, even though it was mixed with the static of the noise. "He's in pain, huh?" I asked, but he just shook his head and raised his hand up, stroking around his ear, not just the ear I've been in a daze since then. Now I ignored thinking about the reasons often heard. Maybe it's the weather or differential pressure on mountains or other similar nonsense. But Daniel still stared out the window, trying to see something in the rain tired me. I squinted to make out some hidden shape. "There's something in the dark, rainy night moving out there," he said, almost breathless, worried eyes far away but getting closer. Hard to see. I didn't need to look to know what he saw in the rain and lightning. The fog still will find a way to get in there, not just the effect of weather, but as a living thing, something born from all that once lived on this mountain. "Emergency wave, go," I said, getting up out of the chair. The strong wind blew through, making the floor creak under my feet, making me fear that the pillars will not support it, and the building will collapse into the woods below. The only thing worse than that fall is having to face the forest right next door below if we can survive the fall. Daniel sat on the chair, turned on the microphone, and sent out a discreet broadcast message through the radio space, while I hurriedly ran to the cupboard to find the flashlight, projector, warehouse keys, and emergency gear. Now everything here makes sense. Emergency food, backpack, first aid kit, rescue flares, fire tools. Here was never just a radio station. It was probably once a control tower. The forest was modified to be able to broadcast large scale. While rummaging through everything to find the keys, I found a walkie-talkie and checked its battery. "Zenio is done with the urgent notification." When I found them, he appeared beside me and snatched one. Both were aware that if electricity was lost, one of us would have to go outside to start the generator. "One of you two turned on the music back?" I asked. Zenio nodded, already on, but his voice lacked confidence, and we both knew that if the lights kept flashing like this, sooner or later, the music would stop playing. Now there's no way to sit there and wait when the fog swept through the forest of trees, rustling in the wind. We only could observe and hope that the broadcast station wave would last. I've never seen the mist stop at the edge of the forest, but this time it stopped. Something in the signal prevented it from crossing the line between us and our town. I removed my headphones to let the music stream in the room and sat down on the floor next to that window, the peaceful moment before the storm. Both just glued their eyes to the trees, poles, and wires swaying out there, wondering which string would break first. There was silence, and then Daniel was the first to break it, like he always does. "Do you want to know what I did before working here?" he asked me. I guessed he'd tell me anyway, so I nodded. After graduating with a Master of Performing Arts degree, Master of Arts doctor, that's the only job I'm looking for, a voiceover for a plumbing service. I recorded in the studio, actually talked about toilets 20 times, and you know what the worst thing is? He turned on a smile with a silly, slightly bitter grin. Damn, they didn't even pick my copy. I heard the ad on the radio when driving, and it was someone else's voice completely different. Never in my life did I feel disappointed not to be chosen to be a toilet cleaner. I laughed at his funny story, his sour shrug, and his indifferent expression. Oh, it's true that I was let down by the radio last time. I laughed around the room, and Daniel laughed along. What about you? He asked again. Tell me a stupid story, the silly thing you did. It made me think, not because I don't remember anything, but because I did too much to tell. What's the story? I also seemed sad. I almost died drowning in the bathtub once. I laughed, despite the story not being funny at all. Daniel seemed unsure whether to laugh along or not. I was drunk and feeling so bad, I decided to take a dip in the tub. As a result, I passed out almost right after getting into the bath, and Jennifer found me after I flipped face down in the water. She really thought I was suicidal until they woke me up and found out I was still as drunk as before. At first I laughed, but Daniel didn't. I know the story's not happy, but I need something to laugh lighter about. Seeing the serious expression on his face, my smile instantly disappeared, and I felt like I was blamed. How awake was she when you asked? Long time ago, and I didn't need to ask how he knew that because he'd seen enough stuff on my computer to understand everything. The truth is, I felt my throat tighten back and took a shaky breath. The first sober day was the day I went to work here a few weeks ago, I said. It sounded like I was so weak, but really, it's not easy, and the only reason I'm not drunk now is because of the damn delivery guy that only brings bottles of bad iced tea. We both burst out laughing, but soon the laughter turned to tears when I couldn't hold back sobbing, 2 hands covering my face. I closed my eyes. I could only feel Daniel's hand patting me on the back there until I put my hands down. I held back my emotions, eyes looking out at the mist lingering at the edge of the forest. It swirled, how many eyes and blurry shapes. The dim light turned eagerly towards the warehouse, too close to the edge of the forest, too close to a pair of familiar eyes looking back at us on the tree, breaking out of the fog curtain and jumping near the window, knocking its beak. It's the monster bird, that devil. I looked at it more closely this time. Its eyes were hazel now. Mine were less, wondering its origin and wondering twice whose eyes it saw. I heard Daniel's voice, but at first I didn't understand right away. I took a deep breath, wiped away the tears, and turned to him with a puzzled look at the meeting. That graduation party, she went into the woods and saw something, right? Not just from graduating. It made my stomach churn. I turned away to avoid his squinting eyes, trying to recall jumbled memories in my mind. Just thinking about it seemed to hurt me too. Then I didn't know that this forest had anything scary, I said. I told you that I left here when I was a kid, right? My father died and my mother remarried. We moved out of my town, came back here for graduation week with some childhood friends, and everyone said this forest has become more terrifying since I left. The fragmented memories still linger somewhere in my head, but I'm trying to piece them together, hit back piece by piece. It's like a gruesome picture slowly appeared before my eyes, making my face contort with horror. I'd get lost, maybe because the party was too noisy and everyone was acting stupid, but in the woods I heard something. At first I thought it was growling, but now looking back I realize it was a voice, a deep groan of pain. Suddenly an animal came out of the bushes, and I think it's either a mountain lion or a wild wolf, but its face, oh my god, its face, yellow eyes like a wild cat, but the nose and mouth were different, looked human and familiar. It looked at me. But what now, when I'm awake? It comes back just as if it had happened yesterday. Dan looked at me with apologetic eyes, as if he had reason to feel guilty with me. He put his hand on my back, mouth moving to say something. I'm sure it'd be words of comfort or encouragement, but he didn't have time to say it. Lightning flashed across, and immediately a loud bang rang when it hit one of the columns around the broadcasting station. Thunder rumbled, mixed with the rustling sound of the radio, before all the lights went out. The sound stopped abruptly, and we were immersed in thick darkness. In the dark, the only thing I could see was Dan's eyes lit up with lightning as he looked towards the edge of the swirling misty forest, rolling like a wave. The creeping monster approached. It was too dark to see clearly, but I still vaguely recognized the blurry shapes in the fog. Arms, legs, and muscles, all of them eager to invade the land from which they had long been forbidden, swirling around the pillars of the tower, crawling up above. And we had no choice but to act. Immediately, Daniel turned on the walkie-talkie to test it, checking by holding it up to his mouth. I heard the crackle of his voice coming from our walkie-talkies, even though we just stood a few steps away. I will storm, I said seriously, jumping up. I'm about to open the fire exit door, but a rough hand pulled my shirt from behind before I could do so. Stay here and turn it back on, I replied firmly, refusing to comply. A frown appeared on my face as I stared at him. I wasn't there when he was hurt, and I couldn't help Jennifer then. Let me do this, go, let me work. We looked at each other longer than necessary, but I felt him slowly let go of my shirt, and his arm fell down, giving me back the freedom to walk. He nodded silently. Daniel, if you're reading this, you sneaky thing, thank you. The door swung open with great force, but I pushed it and was a little surprised when no alarm bells rang. Of course, I quickly realized that the power outage had paralyzed everything, not just lights or radio waves. Fog rose up to cover the ground and crawled up the walls of the building in just a few seconds. I was stuck in there, not knowing whether to run or walk slowly to go undetected, but that's also useless. They knew I was there. My hands were shaking while holding the flashlight to light each step on the fire escape ladder, without ropes climbing, without sticky muddy arms, and nothing waiting for me to fall. But I didn't believe that escape was completely empty. I heard the sound of metal coming from below, as if something was trying to climb up to get me, the sound of the door opening behind me in the fog, so crazy. The creatures groaned in pain. They themselves were like parasites that ate away at each other and groaned in agony. Those who didn't groan released roars or gasps, wheezing as they groped in the fog, searching for something to live for, tearing and turning into part of their collection. Sometimes my flashlight shone on white eyes or wet skin and fur. I didn't dare look back when I was caught in the rain, but I still heard and felt every blow hitting the iron stairs hard, as if something was trying to crawl under my feet. When I saw the end of the stairs, my goal was to run for real, quickly go to the warehouse, and lock myself inside until the generator started. But the problem was how to escape. The light of my flashlight reached the last step, and I saw something that made all that noise, a woman's face staring up at me with her dead, pale blue eyes. She was crawling, the upper half trying to inch up little by little, while the lower body pressed down on her. Half the woman I remembered once seeing on the tree branch, being covered by roots and bark of semi-living organisms. The half-tree man struggled to move a bit on the ground, as if it were too heavy and loose to go further, but her arms were still mobile and completely capable of catching me if I got close. The worst thing was the way she looked at me, full of pleading, as if the human part in her was begging for a way out. I wasn't denying that her aggression seemed to come from fear, but that wasn't enough to make me stop. I jumped down from the last step a few feet off the ground and went straight to the warehouse. Keys in my pocket jingled and slipped through my fingers as I tried to find the right one, while feeling every shadow and eye stalking me constantly. Dense fog approached, making it difficult to see. My flashlight was just bright enough to see that there was nothing in front, but maybe it was also a lucky thing. Creatures hunting in the fog also lost like me. I heard a scream, the shrillness of a man, like the groan of an animal in pain as it was grabbed by another creature, larger and perhaps even scarier. I touched the wooden surface before breathing a sigh of relief when I reached the edge of the warehouse until my fingers touched the door. I took the keys out of my pocket. Clumsy fingers fumbled for the only little one I needed right then. I heard the radio crackle at my hip. Daniel's voice rang out on the other end of the line. "Did you find it?" he asked, and I felt my stomach tighten when I heard his voice echo in the silence. Not only I heard it, the roar and heavy footsteps, like hooves digging into the ground surrounding me. I heard the scream of a creature, something like bird calls mixed with a human scream and roar. The sound made my chest feel like it was about to burst inside. I frantically tried to open the door, each key blindly looking for the last correct key. When about to open it, I felt the ground move when something big and heavy dropped down the side, as if it jumped from the treetop down in thick fog. I saw a layer of grayish-brown fur stuck on it. The stench of blood and mold rose up in the air. Its joints creaked as it bent down to my eye level. I saw its eyes glimmering in my vision, at least 6, pale with yellow spots on the back, on a nose like a deer. Its antlers scratched the side of the warehouse, making a terrible screeching sound. I felt a tap on my back and instantly recognized the tentacles as spider legs that I saw last time, giant spider legs, but with fingers. It exhaled and inhaled with wheezing, and the smell of blood and death in hot steam hit my face as I spoke with Daniel. That he almost drowned in the bathtub was the stupidest thing I've ever done, I said. It was the stupidest thing until today, but today everything has changed. I pushed the warehouse door open, stepped aside to let the heavy wood hit straight into the giant monster's nose next to it faster than ever in my life. I sneaked into the warehouse and locked the door tightly behind me, putting everything I could find to stop it when I heard its roar of discomfort, clearly more from anger than pain. My flashlight shone on the generator, but I had to do it fast. I felt the floor vibrate when something outside banged on the door so hard that dust and debris flew into the air. I fumbled with the oil bottle, accidentally spilled some on my shoes and pants a little, but in the end, I filled the machine. When the monster outside went around the corner of the warehouse in just 2 long strides, it hit the roof loud and strong enough to make the wooden bars on top crack little by little. I threw the almost gone oil vase to one side and tried to find every button and switch in order before the roof collapsed under the weight of its fist punch. I turned on the first switch, then the second switch, punched it hard when, in my fever, I couldn't wait for the engine to start. I yelled over the radio, "I'm almost done. You have to be ready to turn on the circuit breaker. It's downstairs." I heard his voice, but it choked, and his words sounded unclear through the incessant crackling. "God, I hope you can hear me." I felt a sharp pain in the back of my head when a piece of wood fell from the ceiling with a strong bang, and suddenly I saw pale light from above when the dim sky in the fog appeared through a chiseled hole on the ceiling. But immediately it was obscured by the many eyes of the tall, rotten monster from my forest. I turned on the final switch, and the generator started shaking successfully. Suddenly, tell me if I escaped from this pile of crashing wood or not, the power came back on. I backed up, the smell of oil in my hair peeling, looking up at the pale eyes on the roof with fear-filled challenge. The warehouse shook with another strong blow from the side, making me lose my balance and fall down, but not for long. I heard the sound before seeing it, the outside lights ringing up when all lit up one by one, illuminating the entire space with brilliant golden light. That's when I heard the walkie-talkie. Daniel's voice rang out clearly at the top again. "I can't turn on the radio over there," I panicked and said. It didn't have enough energy to run idle. At first, this sounded like a failure, but then I remembered that stupid piece of plastic I'd been staring at on the table for months. Work rule number 1. When the radio stops activity, activate the bell. Just annoyed because it's the one button after that button that has tempted me since the first day I saw it on the wall. No idea what's behind that glass. Press me, I sternly shouted over the radio. Don't hesitate now. I heard him fumbling on the other end of the line before he did it. The next thing I heard, I don't think I heard any sound, at least not from the speaker on top of the radio tower. Instead, I heard Dan scream in pain and stagger around the room for a while, a small squeak and the sound of something falling. Now I know what it was. He threw away his hearing aids. The outside creatures didn't disappear. Instead, they roared in sounds full of pain and anger, hissing and dragging each other away from the surrounding area any way they could. They spun back. The forest was disturbed by a sound my ears couldn't hear. Shrill, maybe too high or too low for my ears to hear, had driven them away. The bell is like any other tool here, existing only to control them, or rather, to control the forest area. The eyes disappeared from the hole on the ceiling, and I heard the giant monster slowly step away and turn back on the mountainside. My legs were weak and my head hurt, but I still tried to open the door and rush out into the midair. I caught a glimpse of the giant swamp disappearing into the forest, and Daniel held the escape door as I climbed back slowly and exhausted, forcing myself to reach the top. The radio was off, but at least we had temporary safety. The first thing he did was pull me into a tight hug, lifting me a few inches off the ground and say some deep words. "This means you smell like oil." What can I say? That was the last time something strange happened here, but as you can guess, it's been a day or two and things are still crazy. The sink no longer fits, but I still get strange calls, and Dan said that it was also hailing. I told you the other day I was mad when he didn't pick up a few calls for me, like a baby otter, I'm sure. Weird things will always be here, and there will always be a story to tell. But when this happens, I think I will focus on doing this job and extending the time I exist more than the humans from 1 to 27. But I'm sure if you don't hear anything from me, Dan will sneak on my computer again one day. I can change the password, but that's it. This is Evelyn from the emergency broadcast station 104.6, and if you're curious, that bird is still out there. Zell decided to name it Bartholomew. I am extremely hateful of Bartholomew.